Mercedes electric car sales are actually up a staggering 82% in the first 9 months of this year versus the first 9 months of last year. But all of a sudden, demand for Mercedes EVs seems to have just almost evaporated. In its biggest EV market, which is surprisingly the United States, Mercedes EVs all of a sudden aren't selling. Now, this does coincide with a YouTube video that's been seen 550,000, probably 600,000 times by the time you're watching this video, which said that the new Tesla Model 3 Highland is better than the Mercedes EQE, which costs nearly twice the price. Not sure if that's relevant, but this is what's happening. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. Great to see you. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. This year, Mercedes-Benz and BMW have increased EV sales by between 80 to 100%. Huge increase, but that's coming from a small base, of course. However, now around 13% of all Mercedes sales worldwide are electric cars, fully electric cars. It should be a little easier for Mercedes to go electric because they charge a higher average price for their cars. So that offsets the slightly higher price of manufacturing EVs. Now, based on the price of battery packs coming down this year by around 30%, a lot of people say it's no longer more expensive to build an internal combustion vehicle versus an EV. And Mercedes-Benz, therefore, is actually able to make a profit on its higher priced EVs, which it wasn't able to do in the past. However, Mercedes-Benz's aspirations to become a global electric vehicle brand have shown early signs of problems and stalling in the automaker's largest EV market, as retailers are struggling to basically to sell the cars sitting in their lots, even though they are discounting them. This happened in China as well. China's a totally different situation. Now, Mercedes does make more profit from China than any other location worldwide. In fact, it makes up approximately 40% of Mercedes profit, the Chinese car market. Mercedes-Benz have definitely focused on EVs there, more so than other places, because they know the Chinese, especially luxury buyers, want electric cars. In some cases, though, they have had to offer some pretty significant discounts because they've had some big problems with their motors over there. They were forced to recall their EVs by the Chinese government. It was a bit of a media, a bit of a thing that really looked bad on them. However, they seem to have gotten over that and returned to focusing on electric car sales in China. But in the US, where they actually sell more EVs than they do in China, things are looking surprisingly challenging. Mercedes reported its US EV sales surged more than fourfold in the first 9 months of the year, mostly because of the higher volume EQE. So the EQE, there is a crossover version, like a sort of an SUV, and there is a sedan. And it seems to be that the sedan version in particular is sitting in dealer lots and, well, basically no one is buying them. Now, what's happening? Edmunds data shows that Mercedes-Benz dealers in September took an average of 82 days to sell the brand's electric EQ models, meaning EQS, EQE. They're the higher priced luxury Mercedes-Benz EVs. That's more than double the time it took BMW to sell their EVs. BMW are only taking 38 days. So 38 days versus 82 shows EV demand for BMW EVs is significantly higher right now than it is for Mercedes EVs. And the same applies if you compare Mercedes-Benz to Audi. Audis are taking around 40 to 42 days, about half that of Mercedes. The segment average for luxury EVs is 57 days. That's in fact the automotive industry average in North America overall, but it's pretty much the same for luxury EVs. Mercedes-Benz, though, is facing what seems to be a bit of a crisis, and it could become worse because this is a trend that's happened within the past couple of months, and it appears to be growing. Mercedes retailers interviewed by Automotive News blame their bloated stockpiles on the product and on the Mercedes-Benz's unwillingness, as in the brand's unwillingness, to respond to increased competition with sales programs. The dealers requested not to be identified for fear of retaliation. They're blaming the product. Well, I'm not sure about you, but I mean, there was a Car Wow video which compared the Mercedes EQE sedan versus the new Tesla Model 3 Highland or the Tesla Model 3 Plus, the Hyundai Ioniq 6, and the BMW i4. And to be honest, when I saw the EQE, I thought it looked really, really nasty. I mean, the inside is just so kind of, it's a really acquired taste. Now, I know some people really love that kind of taste, but it's the kind of taste that I think would appeal to someone who loves wearing big gold chains. You know, big gold chains, rappers and those kind of guys. It really looks like that kind of a car to me. But that's just my opinion. I'm just not sure that kind of thing is going to gel with most people who want to spend a lot of money on an electric car. And then if you look at the reviews, it doesn't seem like it's actually as good as what you would expect for the money. You're paying a lot more for one of these cars versus some of its competitors. For example, the BMW i4 is significantly cheaper than the EQE. The Ioniq 6 from Hyundai, I know it doesn't sound like it would be a competitor considering it's Hyundai, but it is. I mean, it's probably a better car. And the Model 3 Highland is getting even better reviews than all of them. So the question is this a coincidence that these journalists have been publishing these reviews and these comparisons right as the Model 3 Highland came out? That's right when Mercedes-Benz stockpile of EVs appeared to just get worse and worse and worse. And as their dealers have said, it's the product and the price that is the problem. So how long does it normally take to sell an EV? Well, if you look at demand for Mercedes EVs, earlier this year, they were selling fairly quickly. But the problem started in around about July. From then on, Mercedes EVs have been selling or taking a very long time to sell. And sales numbers have, as a result, actually gone down after some initial success from the company. I'm wondering if it's the reason for this is that Mercedes-Benz luxury car buyers were waiting for EVs from Mercedes. They came, they bought their EVs, and maybe there's not anyone else waiting. So Mercedes now has to compete on product, not simply on being a Mercedes. And when it comes to competing on product, well, they're just not good enough to compete with those other cars I mentioned based on product and price. A Mercedes store operator said he has more than 6 months supply of EVs compared with about a 50-day supply of gasoline-powered vehicles. That's strange. The EVs are coming whether or not you ask for them or earn them, he said. There is too much of a price premium, especially at the top end of the EQ lineup, and almost no support. Seems to me as though Mercedes asking higher prices for EVs versus internal combustion doesn't make sense when you're looking at a car that costs more than $100,000. I mean, for example, you can buy a luxury Lucid EV for $80,000 now. Maybe some people think, well, that's a better choice. But even at the same time, people aren't buying Lucid either. The executive said the EVs lack the lust factor of Mercedes' gasoline-powered flagship models, such as the S-Class sedan and the AMG GT Coupe. Our cars need to be want cars, he said. The S-Class has maintained good loyalty because it's aspirational. The EQS is not something that most people aspire to own. In other words, he's saying the EV version of the S-Class is not a car people aspire to own. Now, I've read motoring magazines and I've read thousands of them. I was obsessed with them. And you've got to remember that journalists always focus on one thing, the power war. Now, this is not relevant to a lot of people who buy cheaper cars. I know that. They don't understand this. But the truth is, if you're going to spend $200,000 or more on a car, then you don't want some person driving a car that costs a quarter of the value of your car, driving around knowing he has a more powerful car than you, or at least a better car possibly than yours. Now, I see that as part of the problem here. The Mercedes EQS, EQE, they don't really have anything outstanding about them in terms of power and performance. And even though most drivers won't actually use the power and performance, it's more like a pecking rights thing. It's more like a desirability thing. It's part of the overall package. Mercedes is responding to the discontent. Executives have acknowledged an oversupply of the EQS at the expense of the more affordable EQB and EQE crossovers, a retail source briefed on the matter said. But the problem is, these overstocks, as in the dealerships in the US, they don't just have too many EQSs. They have too many EVs from Mercedes, period. The automaker plans to slow production of higher-end EQ variants while dialing up allocations of lower-priced EVs and full combustion engine vehicles, noting retailers should see a difference in inventory by around the middle of next year. A Mercedes spokesperson declined to comment on discussions with retailers. A Mercedes US boss, Dimitri, attributes sluggish EV sales to product mix and growing pains in an uncharted segment. "We are with a new lineup in a new world," he said. "There is no past. There is no experience with EVs," he said. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, there's lots of other automakers that have been selling them for years. But anyway, supply chain hang-ups, meanwhile, have affected the electric product mix on dealership lots. "We still face challenges around our product lines, and some restrictions are coming from suppliers," he said. "We don't always get the volume we want when we want it." What does that mean? Well, that's kept some more affordable, faster selling electric models, such as the compact EQB, from reaching retailers. And coincidentally, those are the cars that Mercedes-Benz make a loss on. I think there's probably a reason for that, right? They want to sell more of the higher priced cars because they're the cars that they don't make a loss on. "We could not supply the EQB at the beginning of the year," he said. "Now we can, but it takes time for those cars to reach retailers." But Automotive News says the clock is ticking. Mercedes is not alone in its predicament with EVs. Inventories are surging industry-wide as automakers introduce new models and ramp up production to meet stricter federal emissions mandates for the years ahead. The Biden administration has called for EV share to hit 67% by 2032, which is, well, of course, we're a fair way off those numbers. But fortunately, some automakers are heading in that direction. Of course, Tesla is disrupting companies, even Mercedes-Benz. If you look at the statistics, what I'm saying is actually quite factual, because many people who buy or have bought Teslas came from owning Mercedes-Benz vehicles. On Thursday, Cloud Theory released a report showing the average EV sold after 36 days on a dealership lot in 2023. So it only took 36 days to sell an EV. As of September, it's now hit 80 days. And some of the EVs, to be fair, the reason they're not selling is really because they're too expensive for what you get. Not because there aren't lots of good quality EVs or that EVs aren't desirable, but just some of them are overpriced. For the luxury segment, the average time it took to sell an EV rose 73% in September compared with the year earlier. But for Mercedes retailers, that rate ballooned 110%. The ship of early adopters willing to put a reservation down on virtually any EV has sailed, said Ivan Drury, Edmunds Director of Insights. Drury said the brands and their retailers must now convince skeptics and non-believers to switch to EVs, which will take time and financial incentives. I personally am not so convinced. I personally think that if Mercedes came out and said, "Hey guys, look, our EQS and our EQE, they have more power and performance as what? The equivalent gasoline-powered version," right? They said, "Look at this, they're 20% better." All of a sudden, I think you'd find people would say, that's a more desirable product. That does matter to buyers at this level. And that's what I think Mercedes-Benz needs to do. Rising interest rates and inflation are also testing the limits of luxury customers' spending elasticity. Sales of Mercedes flagship electric EQS sedans tumbled by 35% in the third quarter from a year earlier. The 2023 EQS sedan starts at $106,000. And here's the thing. If YouTubers and car journalists are coming out and saying, well, this car is good, but it's not good enough to justify spending that much money because other brands are making better cars for less money, then people aren't going to buy them. Electrification, we're all eager for it. Perry Itzevich, dealer principal of Mercedes downtown in Alberta in Canada, said in June, but people are value conscious. Interest rates have gone up and people are being tighter with their money. Mercedes-Benz actually said the company expects for EVs to account for 40% of new car sales in the US by 2026 and 70% by 2030. However, they expect it to hit around 100% in Europe. For the first 9 months of 2023, Mercedes said EVs accounted for 14.1% of its US sales. However, the company expects that percentage to grow higher. The demand for electric vehicles is growing, Mercedes said, citing the 7.9% adoption rate nationwide in the third quarter. But whether Mercedes-Benz meets the EV volume target by 2026, or if this is a moving half a year or a full year later, it's well ahead of us to be able to make a clear prediction of percentage. Mercedes-Benz are saying EV sales are growing, but dealers are saying our inventory lots are piling up with EVs, and the statistics prove the dealers are telling the truth. So Mercedes-Benz needs to do some real hard work here and work out why this is happening. Mercedes' global EV ambitions are at risk as well, as it struggles for traction in China. This is the world's biggest car market. This is the most important car market for Mercedes. Mercedes failed to crack a top 10 list of best-selling EVs in China priced above $41,000 every single month for the first 9 months of this year. The EQE sedan came in 11th with 6,200 vehicles sold, followed by the EQB with 5,400. That's not normal for Mercedes. They used to be in the top 10, they're not anymore. Former editor of China Auto Review magazine said third-party registration data shows Mercedes sells a couple of thousand EQ vehicles a month, compared with more than 10,000 a month for Chinese luxury EV makers like Geely, Zeekr. Now, China is saying that foreign premium legacy automakers face a competitive onslaught from private and state-owned premium Chinese EV-only brands, and they're losing market share. These startups are quicker in technology adoption, speed to market, and they deliver more bang for your buck, he said. That's forcing the foreign premiums into a corner. And the other thing is here, the Chinese population, they don't think that legacy automakers like Mercedes, BMW, Audi, etc., they don't think that they make better EVs than Chinese companies do. Perceptions of EVs are very different in China to that of perceptions of the old world of internal combustion. In the US, dealers are saying that they have bloated EV inventories, and that's causing a problem for their profits. A Mercedes store executive said 65% of allocation is now EVs, 65%, and they're piling up. He reported a 90-day supply of EQs compared with fewer than 20-day supply of gasoline-powered vehicles. And with interest rates hovering to 7 to 8%, floor plan expense on EV stock is 3 times higher than for gasoline-powered stock. This eats your lunch, he said. When I sell the car, I'm lucky if I make $700 on the deal. So what are Mercedes-Benz doing? They said to reduce supply, they are discounting EQs by more than 15% after also applying factory rebates and incentives. In other words, they're discounting them by around 20% in the US. If you sneeze in the direction of an EV, we'll make a deal with you, he said. So, guys, this is kind of interesting news here. Go to your Mercedes dealer. Offer them 25% less. You may, in fact, get it for that price. That's if you want one. Dealers said the factory, not them, should handle discounting to help sell EQs, as in the luxury Mercedes EVs. Lack of factory support could also be hurting a growth engine for the brand. That's leasing. Edmunds data shows that Mercedes had 43% EV lease penetration in September, just over half of BMW's 80%, and much lower than the segment average of 73%. And here's one of the big challenges Mercedes are facing. Vehicles with a $100,000 plus asking price account for 20% of the brand's volume. Mercedes reported top-end segment sales, including gasoline-powered S-Class, AMG, and Maybach models, rose 11% in the third quarter compared with last year. Our strategy is to offer pure internal combustion products, plug-in hybrids, which have actually come down significantly worldwide. Mercedes plug-in hybrids are definitely on the decline in terms of sales, and full battery electric vehicles, said Mercedes. But right now, Mercedes appears to be in trouble. all of a sudden their EV sales are grinding to a halt. And part of the problem is not just the price, it's also the product. Guys, let me know what your thoughts are on this in the comments. Thanks for watching.